Why is the media reporting of the Israel-Hamas war so poor, so untruthful, so biased, so immoral? Douglas Murray is doing an interview on a show called Uncommon Knowledge, and he unpacks this very question about the poor media performance during this war. Have a watch of what he says as he explains why.
As you say, most of the international media have been relying on Hamas figures. There's a reason for that, by the way, which is that no Western media are in Gaza.
All right, we'll come to that as
well.
They're
not in there. They lie to their viewers. They fib. They cover up for their own journalistic failings. It's not even a failing. I don't blame a lot of it.
So let's come to that right now. Why is the reporting so, it runs from thin to biased to non-existent? I think back to the Iraq War, when we went into Iraq, John Burns, the great journalist, wrote from the New York Times. He was on the ground, he was writing, it was military reporting. You understood, any reader of the Times understood the objectives, understood the progress week by week by week. No such journalism exists. Yeah. Why?
Well, there's only two ways to be in Gaza. One is to be embedded with the IDF, as I've been, and the other is to have the permission of Hamas. Hamas are not very good hosts, and they're untrustworthy hosts. And so most of the Western media rely on journalists who are Gazans, all of whom are operating under Hamas restrictions at best, and most of whom are going to be Hamas supporters. And Hamas, as a result, has got out its figures. It came out with this figure of 30,000 people some months ago, and then they said that this was a number of casualties. They produced no evidence for it, and the world just repeated this figure. That figure, by the way, has been halved.
Has it?
Yeah. Right. In the last few weeks, more official figures, better figures have come out from a range of sources, which say that the 30,000 figure was never true. But anyway, if you follow the IDF's figures on the number of Hamas terrorists that they've killed inside Gaza and the number of innocent civilians killed, if you take even the Hamas figures, you're dealing with roughly, and this is a horrible calculus, but this is war, you're dealing with roughly one terrorist killed to one civilian. America in the field in Afghanistan managed something like one terrorist to 3 or 4 civilians. Right. We don't really know. In Fallujah, how did we do? Not as well as the Israelis. But so that bears lingering on for a second. But the second thing is that the reporting, as I've seen too many times now, the reporting is so ignorant because people repeat what Hamas has said within seconds. Near the beginning of the conflict, there's a place called the Shifa. It's sometimes called the Shifa Hospital. It should be better known as the Shifa Hamas Command Headquarters. It's a place we know from video footage, CCTV. They took some of the hostages on the 7th, and they didn't take them to the Shifa Hospital to treat them. The Shifa had a rocket land in its car park some months ago. And Hamas immediately announced that it was an Israeli rocket that had hit the hospital and killed 500 people. Note, by the way, that the Israelis took months to work out the exact number of figures from the 7th of October who'd been killed in Israel, because it's extremely hard. I've been to the morgues. I've seen the bodies. I've seen the charred remains. It takes a long time to work out who's dead in a burned-out house. Mm-hmm. Magically, Hamas can do it like that and can come up with a round figure. Oh, but after the world has said that the Israelis fired a rocket at a hospital and killed 500 people, after some time, sure as anything, we discover the rocket was an Islamic Jihad rocket fired from inside Gaza, which landed in the car park of the Shifa compound and may have killed some people, not 500. This is the day in, day out reality of reporting on that conflict. Just before we're sitting here, the Israeli Defense Forces are in Rafah, operating in unbelievably complicated situations, very, very intense fighting, to get the last remaining hostages out and to find Sinwar, the architect of the 7th, who's almost certainly hiding in the tunnels under Rafah. Just before we're sitting here, there's an outrage around the world claiming that the Israelis have been indiscriminately bombing a tent encampment of Palestinians. Now, already, after that lie has gone around the world, we discover what happened was that just yesterday or the day before, Hamas fired rockets from between the tents in one of the civilian areas, and they fired them at Tel Aviv. Now the Israelis located the launch pads, and they fired. And it seems that what happened was that a munition of Hamas arms exploded as a secondary explosion. Now, Whose fault is that? All of these deaths are, in my mind, very clearly the fault of Hamas. There is a cost to starting a war. And there is no law of war that I know of that says you're allowed to start a war and massacre civilians in their homes, and then, when you start to lose the war you started, say this is unfair. We would accept this under no other situation, in no other circumstances. But it's the Jews, so it's different.
So Douglas really explains perfectly what it is that has been happening. What you have is, you don't have journalists on the ground in Gaza, and then when something happens and we don't have all the facts, they rely on what the Hamas will say and their Ministry of Health and military wings, and then they'll report, and the lies will spread around the world, and people like Piers Morgan will be, Israel is outrageous, Israel is a disgrace. And then the facts come out, by which point people aren't really paying attention too much anymore. Even the lies around the death count are starting to come out now. Israel's military strategy of being so precise, which is something that the West demand as an important way of fighting, 1-to-1 is unheard of. We also can't ignore the fact that many civilians in Gaza are not just innocent, that many are actually complicit. If you are someone that... We just found out that an Al Jazeera journalist was hosting one of the hostages, was imprisoning one of them. What would we consider that person? A civilian? What about someone that cooks for Hamas terrorists? Is that an innocent civilian? Someone that stores weapons for them? Someone that teaches children to become martyrs? Is that an innocent civilian? A woman that produces a terrorist? Is that an innocent civilian? So the point is, the moral demands that Israel is being charged with are not only a total double standard, but actually in some ways they're completely ludicrous in terms of their whole moral paradigm that they're operating under. But the key takeaway from this is, given Israel faces such a hostile, such an unfair, such a willfully blind media, they shouldn't be paying attention to them. We shouldn't be getting upset by their hysteria, intimidated by their attempts to shame Israel. We should just do exactly what it is that we need to do. And in terms of Douglas's questioning of why is it that the Jews seem to have a totally different standard to the rest of the world, well, we've spoken about this before on JTV, and we'll keep talking about it. The real reason actually doesn't necessarily have to be entirely negative. When the world treats you different to everyone else, even when you so desperately try to just fit in, as Jews have sometimes tried throughout history, when they keep telling you you're different, we're not going to treat you like everyone else, that could be a badge of shame and fear and panic, and you can constantly be trying to appease them. But if someone says you're different, that could also be a sign that we're different in a positive way, in a good way. The world knows we're different. And so we feel, yeah, and they don't like it and they want to get us. Well, how about if we slightly reframe the tone of that statement? They want to get us. They want to get who we really are because they know we are different. They know we're not like everyone else. And as we said before, if your job is to be the teacher in a classroom, which is what the Jewish people are, they're not like the rest of the nations of the world. The Jews were chosen by God to be his nation, to articulate and practice and share his vision for all of humanity, for the world that he wants. And if a teacher tries to just fit in and pretend to be like the students will not treat the teacher like one of the students. They'll take advantage, they'll intimidate, they will tease, bully. They'll treat with a different standard because they know you're not like one of us. So the solution to this has to be that we embrace our difference, that we embrace our mission, and we clearly articulate it to the world. We think the world don't want to hear it and they won't like it, but actually, it's precisely what they're crying out for, particularly now at a time of great moral emptiness in our world, moral lack of direction, particularly now at a time of so much lack of moral clarity and direction. The world is crying out for a strong Jewish people who are absolutely clear on who they are and what their mission is for the world. Not sure if you expected the video to turn this way, but we're trying to get this message across to people because we think this is the root of the whole conflict, the root of the issue. It's a religious issue. That's how you explain both sides of the equation. And we've said in previous videos that they're motivated by religion, and so our response has to be a religious one. I'm Ollie Annisfeld, and you're watching JTV.
Hi, thank you so much for watching. To watch another one, click here. To stay up to date with all our content, click here to subscribe. And if you're able to, you can help support JTV to grow and grow by clicking join below this video, where you can become a member and get perks including early access to videos and private live discussions with me. But most of all, you'll be partnering with us on our mission to change the world.